All right, today we find out if the Mark I Rabbit is faster than a Honda Grom. All right, here's what we got going on. I want to know which one of these two vehicles is going to be faster. So we've got a 1981 Volkswagen Rabbit pickup truck versus a 2019 Honda Grom. Now, if you know anything about these two deals, you'll understand why this is a relatively fair comparison. This came originally with a 1.6 indirect injected non-turbo diesel that made 49 horsepower to the crankshaft. This originally came from the factory with like 125cc single cylinder 4-stroke engine. It's just a really good learner's bike. Now, as interesting as that comparison would be between the 1.6 and the 125cc engine, neither of these have got the stock engines in them anymore. So we have got a 1.9 ALH TDI in the Volkswagen, and we have got a 212cc Daytona aftermarket engine with a big bore kit on it. So that thing parties. This thing at least goes down the interstate now. Now for the Rabbit, like I said, we've got that 5-speed sitting in there. We've got Apple CarPlay. We're missing the door panels. Other than that, it's pretty stock interior. When you walk around over to the engine, like I said, we have got a 1.9 swapped in here, has an AirDog 100-gallon power pump, cold air intake, water to air intercooler. It does have a tune on it, and then that's about it. Stock turbo, stock injectors, stock pump. Realistically, the only thing that this has got done to it is a tune. If you want to count the intake and the intercooler as part of it, okay, more power to you. If not, it's basically a tune only deal. Now, being swapped to a 1.9 TDI, we have basically doubled the power that this thing came with from the factory. And as such, it torque steers pretty bad. I don't know how well that OEM suspension is going to be able to handle today, so we're probably going to leave pretty soft with it. Now, I will say that the Rabbit has a higher top speed. So the Rabbit can easily go 120 miles an hour, whereas the Grom is kind of done at about 85 miles an hour. And speaking of the Grom, here's what we got going on with it. Like I said, we've got a 212cc engine with a big bore kit sitting on it, and we have got whatever aftermarket exhaust this has got sitting on here. We have also got ourselves a Nibby carburetor in here. So we've got the carburetor tune, decent air filter, minus the fact that it's missing a cap. It is a 5-speed now instead of the 4 speeds that the Groms had. I don't know what the sprocket ratio is either. Got a decent back tire. This thing has also got a slight stretch kit to it, putting that back wheel a little bit further out, so maybe we'll be able to leave a little bit harder with it. I don't know. Now, here's my prediction on how this race is fixing to go. The Grom is going to get it to the 60 foot, but after the 60 foot, the Rabbit is going to take the W. Like I said, this thing has got stock suspension, and as such, leaving with it is going to be a little bit of a challenge. But once this thing is rolling, it should roll out pretty good. Whereas that'll be able to get off the line really quick, optimize on the power. But once it gets to the 60 foot, I mean, you're going to be up in 3rd or 4th. And it's just not going to have the gear to be able to pull on this thing. So I'm going to get the Grom into the back of the Rabbit, and we're going to head over to Holiday Raceway and see what this thing runs. We're only going to run it to the 8th mile. There's no real sense in running it to the quarter. It'll be decided by the 8th mile. All right, so we have made it all the way out here to Holiday Raceway. We have got the Rabbit and the Grom, and we're going to get all that crap unloaded. There's going to be like another 30-ish minutes that they're running just slicks, because slick prep is different than anything else. And then after that, around 6 o'clock, we'll be able to start running this stuff and seeing what it does. All right, so I can go ahead and run the Grom because they're not worried about it spinning or tearing up all the track prep for the slick guys. We'll have to wait till later to be able to run the truck, but we'll be able to get our 3 passes in on the Grom and see what that thing is running. All right, so we ran the Grom earlier. We came back with basically a 12.4 at 50-something miles an hour. Not bad. It wasn't warmed up though, so the carburetor had a bit of a bog off of the line and whatnot. I'm gonna let it warm up, run it again. Somewhere in there, we're gonna go run the Rabbit. All right, so the Grom ran a 12.4 at 53 miles an hour. And then we just took the Rabbit down there. It's leaking a little bit of diesel now. I think that is because those 2 lines sitting back there are still hooked up to the fuel tank, and that is the feed and the return line. I'm gonna need to add a cap to those 2 lines to keep from putting diesel on the track. And then wherever it is, somewhere down in there, that CV axle is no longer happy with me. I don't know what I did to it, but it shook the tire pretty good whenever I was trying to get it underneath boost, and it ran a grand total of 11.0 at 65 miles an hour. So we're a solid 2.5 faster than the Grom, so we're gonna get back after it with the Grom. All right, well, we ran the Grom again, and it's a solid 2.5 slower than the Rabbit. No, it's not. We picked up a second, because the last one was a 12 something. This one's 11.5. Y'all can't really see it. No, we picked up a solid second on this deal. So we ran an 11.5 at 54 mile an hour. So our mile an hour is up. We picked up a good bit from the last time we ran it. Yeah, I had to go find the old slip. So this is what we ran the first time at a 12.4, 53. This is what we just ran with the Grom. So an 11.5 at 54. So the Grom is now a half a second slower than the Rabbit. And I don't know what we're gonna do to make the Grom go any faster than what it is. Maybe a driver mod, because I'm scared to launch with this thing because it'll wheelie. I don't know. We're not doing bad though. All right, so it's the next day. Let's go over the time slips from these two deals. So this is our first time slip with the Grom. As you can see, our reaction time is just to be continued. Our 60 foot's a 2.9 and our ET is a 12.4 at a speed of 53 miles an hour. Not bad for a little Honda Grom. Like, you know, it's not doing bad. The reaction time is definitely pretty terrible. Then we moved on to the Volkswagen Rabbit with a TDI swap in it. And our reaction time was still to be continued. Our 60 foot was a 2.6 and our ET was an 11.0 at 65 mile an hour. So that puts the Rabbit a solid 1.5 seconds faster than the Grom, and it also is 10 mile an hour quicker on the big end of the track than what the Grom is. Now this gets interesting because the first time we ran the Grom, it wasn't warmed up. It had a pretty nasty carburetor bog on it. So we went back and we re-ran the Grom again. And as you can see, we picked up about a second on the ET, and our mile an hour did not pick up a whole bunch. However, our 60 foots, we're going to a 2.5 versus the Rabbit with a 2.6. So the Grom is now 60 footing harder than what the Rabbit does. But at the end of the day, it is still a 0.5 seconds slower than what our Rabbit is. And our mile an hour is still down 10 mile an hour from what the Rabbit can do. So the Grom will out 60 foot the Rabbit. The Rabbit though, on the 1-2 shift, if it's underneath boost, it shakes the tires really hard. This has still got all factory Mark 1 suspension on it. So getting this thing out of the hole is a challenge, and you can see that in the time slips. Whereas this, it's got the power to be able to get out of the hole. It's challenging to be able to keep the front end down, keep it from wheeling, but once it gets to the back end of the track, it just doesn't have anything left in it. So with the Grom, as you can see from our first pass to our second pass, we picked up ET, we picked up about a second, but our mile an hour did not pick up a whole bunch at all. Our 60 foot definitely picked up a good bit. It just doesn't have anything left on the top end of the track, which is where this thing starts to shine. That's where it's able to start putting the power down and get rolling out. So I think we could do a driver mod, be able to leave in second gear, pick up some on that 60 foot, be able to maybe get a little bit closer to the 11.0 that the Rabbit runs, but I don't think that this thing is really going to be able to start competing with the Rabbit. The Rabbit's already 10 mile an hour faster than what the Grom is, and that's really without being able to push it. Like I said, this thing can't 60 foot. It just shakes the front end. The suspension isn't built for it, and if we start trying to make this compete with that, it's just not going to be fun anymore. So for the drag racing side of it, the Rabbit clearly wins over the Grom, but you also still have to factor in a whole bunch of other stuff. For example, this can have 2 passengers and that can have 2 passengers. Legally speaking anyways. You get your front pegs, you get your rear pegs, you get your 2 seats sitting in here. So for the seating capacity, they're evenly matched between the 2 of them. The Rabbit's got 4 times as many cylinders as what the Grom has, plus it needs an inhaler just to be able to run those numbers. The Rabbit has got a 5-speed, the Grom has got a 5-speed, the Rabbit has reverse, the Grom has got 2 tires. I feel like that balances out in the end. The Rabbit's got 2 headlights, the Grom only has 1 headlight. I was gonna say that they both have 2 mirrors, but that's a lie. The Rabbit has actually got the 3rd rear view mirror, so Rabbit's taking the W on that. The Rabbit's easily able to do freeway speeds where the Grom can't. The Grom, if you try to get on the interstate in Kentucky, you'll probably die. You might mess up a wheel bearing in the Rabbit, but you'll survive in the Rabbit. Now the Grom is 1/10 of the price of what the Rabbit is, and as such, I don't feel like it's a bad competitor. But overall, I'm gonna say that the Rabbit wins the whole competition, regardless as to which way you look at it. If you disagree with me, comment down below why, and maybe we'll run this back. I think since the 67 is still running, the next time I get an opportunity to go to Holiday, we will take the Rabbit and we will run the Rabbit against the 67. Duramax swap versus a TDI swap. And now the 67 does make 3 times the horsepower, but it's got more than 3 times the weight, and it's got an extra 2 tires on top of it. Overall, I think that the Rabbit versus the 67 would be a good matchup, just like the Grom versus the Rabbit was a good matchup. Even though the Grom can 60 foot harder than the Rabbit can, the Rabbit still is running away with it with a 0.5 second on it for the ET. Maybe the 67 goes the same way. Maybe the Rabbit can 60 foot harder than what the 67 can, but the 67 will get it on the back end. I don't know until we actually run it back, but for now, that's it. I mean, we had the Grom versus the Rabbit. Rabbit's taking it. What more could you ask for?